Hey, you can be seated. We're so glad that you're here. I want to take a moment to welcome everybody watching online, everybody in Hollywood, Crossroads, and McKinney. And I don't know when's the last time you had pyro in church. I got here this morning. I said, y'all got me coming out to pyro? I said, can I call on the pyro at will? They said, you can call on the pyro whenever you want. I said, so if I said, does anybody love Jesus? Hit it, Dave. Thank you. Now let me back up, because I don't want a Michael Jackson situation. But the pyro will cry out to Jesus if you don't. Okay, I got pyro on my side today, so we good. Happy 4th of July. My name is Ryan, if we've never had the pleasure of meeting, and thank you for the couple of claps for my name. That's not that crazy. But hey, if it is your first time, I just wanted to say thanks for giving us a small part of your holiday weekend. I realize that there are people who are here with us today who might not consider themselves Christians or church people. Maybe a girl asked you to come here. You asked her out. She said, hey, if you come to church with me, I'll think about it, and you're here today. Hey, we're so glad you're here. Great move, by the way. I realize that there's a lot for you to be able to come into this space, and there might be some, man, I'm not sure if I know the songs. I'm not sure if I know the verses. I want you to know, I think that today's message is going to add a lot of value to your life. And perhaps you might be in a different category, a category of people where you look back on the last 16 months of your own spiritual journey, and perhaps you've just lost your faith. Perhaps you just have a crack in your faith that you're just going, I'm just now getting back into the swing of things when it comes to church. Well, I'd say to you, welcome back. It's good to see you. And then there's our church vets. You're here all the time, and we're so glad that you are, and we're so grateful for your faithfulness. Here's what I believe that can happen today. Here's my prayer for each and every one of us, that regardless of our spiritual pedigree, that we wouldn't just be able to celebrate freedom externally with some barbecue and some fireworks and some pyro, but internally remain bound by insecurities, by bitterness, by anger, by pride and pain. And here's the deal, I don't know what kind of season you've been in over the last year, but I do know the kind of season that God wants you to have, and it is one of freedom. At Covenant Church, we often say we first want you to know God, then we want you to find freedom, then we want you to discover your purpose. And then that puts you in a position so that you can make a difference. And today, and over the next couple of weeks, we're going to zoom into that find freedom piece. Today, I want to talk to you about how you can find freedom in your thought life. Today's message is called Filing Chapter 11. Filing Chapter 11. Some of you are going, I pray we don't have to do that today, but trust me, by the end of today's message, I hope that we all can file Chapter 11. There are a lot of things in our life that can get us down, that can beat us up, that can make us even lose heart. And when I talk to people in 2021 about how they're doing in their thought life, these are the words that often come up in conversation. The first one is lonely. They're just going, I just don't have a whole lot of people in my world that I can truly count on. The second word that I often hear is the word exhausted. People are just, I mean, we could talk about parenting. We could talk about travel right now. No matter what we're doing, it's just, and you would think over the last year we got rest, but somehow it was exhausting being at home. I also hear this one a lot, undervalued. And this happens in work, this happens in the home, this happens in relationships where these are some things that can just make us talk to ourselves, and we just can struggle in our thought life. And the word that I often hear as well is overwhelmed. And I don't just hear these words from alcoholics. I hear these words from pastors. I hear these words from professional athletes. I hear these words from business executives. I hear these words from rich people. I hear these words from poor people. I hear these words from pretty people. I hear these words from people that wouldn't consider themselves pretty. I think they're beautiful in the eyes of God, but that's just between them and God. Now, I hear these words from people that have a lot of followers, from people that don't. There is no amount of success that can really get you out of all of this. Like, I know very successful people that feel all of these things. And I know even for me, my son started playing soccer this year, and I thought, oh, this is awesome. All right, man, I'm gonna do this thing. And I had this grand idea that, oh, maybe I should be the coach. Ryan, for what? Why? This is a horrible idea. Like, that's it. You need to add another thing to your plate that's already full. And that's the tendency that we often do, is we bring on so many things, and then we're shocked when things are just so overwhelming. There is sometimes this feeling that you and I have, that we have these overwhelming thoughts that won't allow us to overcome challenges. Today, I want to dive into a couple of verses that I think are going to help set us free mentally. I want us to dive into some insight that's found in 2 Corinthians. It's written by the Apostle Paul, and he wrote a few letters to the church of Corinth. Two of them are present in our Bible. The first one he sent, 1 Corinthians, was addressing many problems the church was having, but it was rejected mostly based off of what Paul says. He gives us some insight. He says, hey, people aren't really feeling letter 1. So 2 Corinthians, technically what scholars believe is the third letter to the church in Corinth, has 3 main parts. The first 7 chapters, Paul is reconciling with the Corinthians. And Paul is reconciling with them in a way that's like, I don't know if you ever remember that time where your mom may have disciplined you, but she said, when your daddy get home, it's gone. And like you were just in fear the whole day because you were waiting for daddy to get home. That's kind of how the first 7 chapters of 2 Corinthians are. Like Paul be like, should I come with the whip, or how do you want to do this? You're like, Paul, calm down. What they do? And then chapters 8 and 9 is encouraging the church to be more generous. And chapters 10 through 13, Paul is challenging the remaining naysayers in Corinth who are still rejecting his teaching. Now, these naysayers that Paul is writing to, they keep using the words frequently, boasting. They like to boast about their accomplishments. They like to boast about their accolades. And Paul all of a sudden goes, oh, you want to play that game? You want to play the boast game? Trust me, ain't none of y'all got what I got. And so the beginning of 2 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul reveals to us that he had a heavenly vision where he himself didn't know if he was taken up to heaven literally or just shown it. But in this letter, he lets them know, hey, I was given revelations by God himself at his place. Have you? He's just letting it go. He goes, if anyone has bragging rights here, it's me. And here's what he says next in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. He says, so to keep me from becoming conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. It's interesting. We don't really know what this was. Sages of the ages have speculated that this, what this thorn really was. We really don't know, but we do know how he felt about it. We also get a hint from him that says it's something that is definitely nagging him. It was consistent and constant, and it was painful enough for Paul to bring it up to God. Why is this important? Because it's rather interesting of a request from Paul to God that says, hey, can you get rid of this thing that continues to harass me? It's just really annoying, because what we find in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 is, it's very different. It's a different tone than what Paul says in chapter 12. He says this in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. He says, are they servants of Christ? I know I sound like a madman, but I have served him far more. I have worked harder, been put in prison more often, been whipped times without number, and faced death again and again. 5 different times the Jewish leaders gave me 39 lashes. Chapter 11 is very different than chapter 12. In chapter 11, he's going, hey, do you know what I've been through? And when we get to this part, he's gotten 39 lashes, 5 times. You know who else got 39 lashes? Jesus. Once. And look at who it's from. Church leaders. This is what I like to call church hurt. When the people that hurt you were the people that weren't supposed to. When the people that you thought very highly of, you found out that they were very human. And you got very disappointed and perhaps made the mistake of rejecting God because of what a human did. I can't tell you how many people I know that are walking away from the faith because of their church hurt. That when you talk to them about their faith, they will tell you a story about a Christian, not Jesus. And if that's you today, I have to invite you back. I have to. Because you and I, we have to beware of intertwining our faith in God with our faith in people. There are pastors that have had moral failures. And I'll be sitting with somebody, they'll go, isn't it devastating? If Jesus had a moral failure, yeah, that'd be devastating. But that's a human. My faith was never in him or her. My faith was in God. I pray for them, but my faith is stronger than ever before. Because my God is still faithful even when people are not. So the first thing that I believe is going to set us free mentally is, number one, we need to decide what people owe us and let God pay the bill. Decide what people owe us and let God pay the bill. Because some of us are walking around with this, you owe me. And it's killing you mentally. And you can't move on with your life. What do they owe you? What do people owe you? If you don't give that to God, your thought life will never be free. Yet, the people you think owe you something ain't even thinking about you. They're busy. I meet way too many people who are waiting for permission to move on with their life because of their pain. I know way too many people who are waiting for an apology before they move forward with their faith. God has a plan for your life. And if you spend your life waiting for an apology, you might never find freedom for your soul. What would you do if I told you that you could move on and be free before an apology? That by the time they came to apologize to you 10 years from now, you're like, I've been free for 10 years. I ain't been waiting on you. How can you be free? How can you be free before an apology? You can be free before a debt is paid. Why? Because you serve a God who paid your debt. That's why we're here. I will never understand how a fully surrendered follower of Christ can remain bitter. It doesn't actually make sense to me. It's literally an oxymoron that a group of people whose entire faith is predicated on being left off the hook would somehow hold someone else on one. It makes no sense whatsoever. So if you've been let off the hook, let them off the hook. Decide what people owe you and begin walking in forgiveness right now. I know they talked about you. I know they disrespected you. I know they hurt you. I know they took something from you. I know they robbed you of something in the past. But I want you to be free, and I don't want them to continue to rob you of your future. It's time for you to be free. He says this, he goes on in chapter 11. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned, not the kind of stones you're thinking about, okay? Like he was stoned. In fact, stoning during that day wasn't just someone throwing rocks, okay? They would actually throw you off a cliff and drop the stones on you. He made it through that. Once he made it through that. 3 times he was shipwrecked. Once I spent a whole night and a day adrift at sea. I have traveled on many long journeys. I have faced danger from rivers and from robbers. I have faced danger from my own people, the Jews, as well as from the Gentiles. I have faced danger in the cities, in the deserts, and on the seas. And I have faced danger from men who claim to be believers but are not. I have worked hard and long, and during many sleepless nights, I have been hungry and thirsty and have gone often without food. I have shivered in the cold without enough clothing to keep me warm. This is chapter 11. And there are days when you thought you were having it rough. You ain't read chapter 11. He's going, listen, Paul says if there's anything to boast about, it's not going to be about my accomplishments. It's my weaknesses and my downfall. He's not laying this out for us to feel bad for him. He's using it as a technique to illustrate humility. But if I'm honest, when I see the list of the things he endured, I think to myself, you are very specific about your persecution and what you've been through in chapter 11. But in chapter 12, you're really vague. You're like, it's this. It's a thorn. I mean, I'm thinking, what could be worse than chapter 11, Paul? I mean, it's ironic that Paul pleaded with God 3 times to take away this, but he didn't ask God to take away any of those horrible things in chapter 11. Because, trust me, pick one of them. Not all of them, just pick one. I'll be going, God, please. I'm not trying to be adrift at sea. Like even cold one night, hungry. Some of us miss 1 meal and we upset going, God, what is up? Like, come on. What could be worse? Have you ever had a this? Have you ever had something that you wouldn't even tell your best friend that you were praying about? I remember the good old days where you would be in a prayer circle. Like, hey, you got anything to pray for? You got anything to pray for? If it got extra quiet, they'd be like, okay, the prayer leader would be like, anybody got any unspoken? You'd be like, yeah, I got an unspoken. I ain't telling nobody in this circle because I don't know y'all that well, but I got an unspoken. Paul has an unspoken. He doesn't want us to know that. He wants us to know chapter 11, but chapter 12, this thorn, it just keeps nagging. Have you ever had that? I had this friend who would post about this tree on Instagram all the time. I swear this tree came up on their timeline at least once a week. And we'd be like, what's going on with this tree? I'm like, why do you keep posting about this tree? She was like, well, this is where I go to pray to God. I pray to God at this tree. I said, about what? She said, I can't tell you. I said, all right, I ain't getting all up in your business, but you keep making it my business because you keep putting this tree online. So I was just curious. My bad. And then it was like 4, 5, 6, 7 months where I didn't see the tree. And I went, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Where'd the tree go? I said, hey, what happened to the tree? She said, that's where I was disappointed. That's where God told me no. And I just can't go back to the tree. And I said, my friend, I think God's inviting you back to the tree because that's where he connected with you. Come back to the tree. I think God's inviting us all back to the tree. It says that 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. 3 times. Has God ever told you no? 3 times? He didn't even tell him no. He just said, you'll be all right. Have you ever prayed for something and your request was denied? You prayed for an outcome financially, relationally, and God just said, you'll be all right. My grace is sufficient. I think Paul would make the argument to God, hey, if things go well for me, remember we just connected in heaven just a couple of verses ago. I think I would be better if, if I didn't have to go through all this stuff. You're using me. I'm writing most of the New Testament. How many people volunteer for this? I mean, God, I'm kind of your boy. I mean, don't you think I would be more useful to the kingdom without, I've already been through chapter 11. Do I really need a thorn too? Really? Don't you think I could be more useful to you and your kingdom without this thorn? To which God's response would be, hey, Paul, how'd you get through chapter 11? How'd you make it through 39 lashes from the Jews 5 times? How'd you endure prison? How'd you stand to your feet after being beaten with rods and stone? How'd you make it adrift at sea for 24 hours? How'd you survive poverty? How'd you love again after being robbed? Hey, Paul, what in the world sustained you through a sleepless night? It was the amazing power and grace of God. It was the amazing grace and power of God that got him through chapter 11. And that same amazing grace is sufficient for your thorn in chapter 12. Might you be encouraged to know his grace is sufficient for a layoff. His grace is sufficient for a divorce. His grace is sufficient for navigating a blended family and all that comes with it. His grace is sufficient for that kid whose faith is broken. His grace is sufficient for everything you need to be a leader, a dad, a mom, or a student. His grace is sufficient for every insecurity you have. His grace is sufficient for your darkest hour and your darkest day. I like to think of it like this. The more you're going through, the more I think, ooh, God must have a plan for your life. Devil don't like you. And his grace is sufficient. That's why I think the second point is going to help us find freedom in our thought life. And it's this, number 2, make a list of what God has brought you through. Make a list. Make a list. This is vitally important because when you're going through something, you might make the mistake of questioning the character of God. When your history is an indication of his grace and his mercy. Paul had a chapter 11, and you should too. File chapter 11. Make a file of what God has brought you through so you can remember his character when you can't always feel his goodness. Say, wait. I know I'm going through a lot, but I've been through a lot. How did I get there? The mercy and grace of Jesus. I love what Psalm 23 verse 6 says. Surely, like in case you're wondering, I know for sure that his goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Have you ever thought about that for just a minute? Because you kind of like, you're just going through your life, and I think some of us just forget to turn around and see who's in the rearview mirror. They stalking us like, hey man, get up off it. Oh, what's up? Goodness and mercy, I didn't know you was there. You quit playing, man. Lost my job. I can't believe I lost my, oh, goodness and mercy. Good to see you. All right, that's cool. Oh, you don't want to date me no more? You know what, you breathing all up on my shoulder, goodness and mercy. You need to quit it. Quit playing with me. It's following you. His goodness and his mercy. And some of us, you might think that God wasn't there. You might think God didn't care. You might have thought God was silent. Check your review. What you will find all along your life is that his goodness and mercy were following you all the days of your life. I've grown up in church my whole life, and I've gotten to the point where I can look out during worship and I can tell who's been through the most by how they worshiping. Like this guy. I know breakthroughs coming down. But you ever worship next to that crazy person? You was doing social distancing before it was a thing because you like, oh, Sarah, okay, let me give her about 6 feet because you don't even close your eyes and worship next to them because you get popped in the nose because they just, hey, God, I love you. You bend the knee, they be doing all of this. They be stretching during worship. They've been through some stuff. Yeah, they've been through some stuff. They fighting a battle. And the only way they know how to do it is to sing and praise and worship. So they've been to hell and back. So you just got to keep singing, baby. Every now and then I'll just be singing at the house. My family can't stand the way that I sing. They be like, could you just try and sing on key? Like give Jesus a little effort, something. I'm like, you don't know the cost of the oil in my alabaster box. Back up off me. Sing how I want to sing. But you don't need permission to worship because they weren't in the waiting room with you. They weren't up all night anxiously waiting for a doctor to call them back. They weren't there when your kids were sick. They weren't there when you didn't know how to pay off that credit card bill. They weren't there when you almost lost your marriage. They weren't there when you had to pretend you still had a job. They weren't there when you were on the heels of that investment going bad. But the mercy and grace of God was with you all along. They don't know why you're singing so loud, but God knows. And when we look back, what we're going to see is that his goodness and his mercy were there all along. And I love what the next verse says. It says it like this: therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Oh, he's doubled down now. He was down just a couple of verses ago. He's like, now he's like, bring it. Verse 10 says this, it says, for the sake of Christ, then I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Twitter would be very frustrated with Paul. He's like, persecutions? The more, the better. The more power of Christ I get to experience. Come on, talk about me. Go for it. Paul's giving us some keys today that I think can set us up to be free in our thought life. He's trying to set up our thinking to be undefeated. I mean, how can you defeat somebody that talks like that? Think about it. I mean, some of us are just so afraid of someone saying something negative about us. Paul's like, bring it. Another opportunity for me to grow closer to the Lord. How can you defeat someone mentally like that? Paul saw dark times as an opportunity for God's light to shine brightest. We all want to see God's strength on display. We all would love to see signs, miracles, and wonders, but we don't get to see any of that without going through something. I mean, Paul's like, hey, man, I've been through chapter 11, chapter 12. I ain't going to tell you what it is, but you know what? Bring it. We good. Because I've got the sufficient grace of God on my side. Some of us find ourselves in a place where we're weak. We just can't break free of some things that just entangle us. We can get caught in a cycle of toxic thoughts. We often want God's strength to break us free, but we don't often know how. My last point to find freedom in our thought life today is simply this. Number 3, own your weaknesses. Own them. I know we're taught, hide those things. Don't let nobody see you. Post your best, hide the rest. We're allowing the enemy to use our weaknesses against us. You're not good enough. You're not educated enough for that position. You don't have enough experience, young man. You can't do it all. Who's going to marry you after all that you've done? I'm not good enough. Own it. God is, though. I'm not that educated. I'm not that smart. God is, though. I can't do it all. God can. I don't know who's going to want to be in a relationship with me after all I've done, but I know the value I can add to a relationship after they see what God has done in my life. I know we live in a world where it's popular to boast about this, but what we're good at. But if you want to find freedom in your thought life, you're going to have to own your weaknesses, because that's the quickest way to experience the almighty power of Jesus Christ. How do we do that? The answer is so profound, it's going to blow your mind. It's very simple, ladies and gentlemen. Invitation. Proverbs 3, verse 5 and 6 says, so trust God from the bottom of your heart. Don't try to figure everything out on your own. Listen for God's voice in everything you do, everywhere you go. He's the one who will keep you on track. Whether I'm sitting with leaders, executives, athletes, students, young adults, married couples, singles, the biggest mistake I see people make is attempting to fix their own problems with their own understanding. You got into this mess based off of your understanding. How do you think you're going to get out of it based off your understanding? You're not that smart, neither am I. That's why we need God. Thank God he's available. One of the most important spiritual disciplines we have to have is fighting the I got this mentality. I got this. Everybody, hey mom, I got this. Hey colleague, no, me, I got this. What if you don't? What if you don't? Got this. That's a good thing for you, because there's somebody else that can get it. Who's better at getting it than you? His name is Jesus. What if we invited an able and willing God to help us? Have you invited God to give you his strength? Have you invited God to give you his perspective? I want us to adopt Paul's mentality on life in setbacks and failures. And in summary, what I want you to do this week is I want you to decide what people owe you and let God pay the bill. Spoiler alert, he already paid it. Number 2, make a list of what God has brought us through. File chapter 11. And number 3, own our weaknesses. Can you imagine if we did this together? At this point in time, I'm going to pass it over to all of the campus pastors. We love you. Collywood, Crossroads, and McKinney. Come on, can we make some noise for them one last time? Love you guys.